So, the second weekend of the Battlefield 6 beta starts tomorrow, and because of that, I figured since I put probably over 40 hours into the beta over the last weekend that we were able to play it, and leveled up every single weapon in the game to its max level, I figured I'd come on here and make a quick tier list of what I think all of the best weapons are, so if maybe you didn't get a chance to play the previous beta weekend, or maybe you did and you just didn't get a chance to use all the weapons, I can give you a good little bit of insight on which ones you want to level up, which ones are worth using, and which ones, well, aren't. At the end of the tier list, I'm going to do a quick overview of my overall thoughts on the weapon balance in of itself and how I'm worried about some things, but to get things out of the way, we're going to start from the bottom and go up. After all, I don't want to waste too much of your time. In terms of trash weapons, I think there's only really two of them, and I'm gonna start with the more obvious pick, which is the P18 pistol. The pistol in this game almost feels like a joke. It's like they put it together specifically with the intent of being terrible, because it's just horrible all around. At very close ranges, this gun deals 25 damage, so it can 4-shot kill if you're basically right on top of somebody. But the damage fall off is absolutely absurd. That 4-shot doesn't last, and it quickly goes to a 5-shot kill, then a 6, then you're probably looking at a 7 or an 8 at further ranges. Now obviously it is a secondary, so I don't expect it to be the best weapon in the game by any rights, but considering that there's several fully automatic weapons on here that also deal 25 damage, there's just basically never a reason to use this unless you are seriously in a pinch. And even if you are, a lot of the time it genuinely might be better to be risking a reload than to try to take someone out with a pistol, because it is inconsistent, unreliable, and the damage model is awful. Overall, hands down the hardest gun to get to level 20, seeing as it's a secondary and it absolutely feels like a secondary. Now, the only other gun that I feel like genuinely falls into the trash category, and I think this is going to be extremely controversial, but it is what it is, and I'll give my reasoning, and that gun is the M210 ESR sniper rifle. I should make it known that this tier list is being mostly curated around the Conquest game mode, and in Conquest, sniper rifles have basically always been borderline useless in almost every scenario. The kind of people who complain about sniper rifles being too strong or overpowered are also the kinds of people who usually just don't know what they're talking about and are going to be at the bottom of the leaderboard. Because objectively speaking, a sniper rifle is inferior to so many other weapons that fill the exact same niche, especially one really important one that we'll be talking about later, on top of the fact that it's only going to be effective if you are literally perfect. There's no universe where you go onto a point and capture it while running a sniper rifle. And it's even worse because the pistol is so bad. So if you do push someone on a point and you whiff your sniper shot and then you have to pull out the pistol, you're screwed. It's over. So as much as I would love to throw a bone to all of the people sitting 16 miles away just spamming out sniper shots and getting maybe 10 kills a game and 0 captures, I can't in good faith call the sniper rifle good. Now, moving up in the world, we get over to the kinda bad category, and there's only a couple guns that fall into this. The first weapon that I'd put into there is the KTS 100 Mark 8. This LMG shoots so slow. Seriously, we're talking about a 514 RPM gun, which can 4-shot kill out to a fairly decent range, drops off to a 5-shot pretty quickly, and admittedly is a complete laser beam. It has basically no recoil whatsoever, and it has basically no random spread whatsoever, which in theory means that if you want to sit like 800 miles away and shoot at snipers with this thing, sure, go for it. Maybe you can make it work. But at that point, you should probably be using, well, a sniper rifle or a DMR. The only reason that it doesn't get put into complete trash is the fact that it's a fully auto gun that can 4-shot kill and has no recoil. So I can understand people that maybe struggle with recoil might enjoy this weapon, but overall time to kill wise, it's horrific. And the fact that it's an LMG doesn't help either, because it means that if you're using it on any class other than medic, you're going to be running slower, and the amount of time it takes to ADS is significantly longer than the other guns in the game. Meaning that if you get into a close combat engagement, a lot of the time you'll be dead before you can even scope in the rifle. Overall, KTS 100, not there, would not recommend it. Now, the other gun that falls into the kind of bad category is the SGX. This one I'm probably also going to get some controversy on, and I think there's going to be people who are going to be like, well, I used that gun and I thought it was pretty good. But statistically speaking, I honestly probably should have put this gun in the trash category. The major flaw with the SGX is that it's basically a statistical clone of the M433, the first assault rifle that you unlock in the game. And we'll talk about that gun later because it's listed significantly higher on the tier list. The reason the SGX sucks so bad is because its rate of fire and damage are identical to that of the M433. The difference, of course, being the fact that you can get a bigger mag on the M433, and the damage ranges that are available for the M433 are way better. So you have the exact same time to kill up close as the assault rifle, and you have a significantly harder time killing people at range. The only caveat is that this gun has less recoil and less random spread at range, so it's more of a laser beam. But in practice, what it ends up coming down to is that this is a clone gun and just a worse version of that other gun, which makes it kinda bad. Now, moving forward, I think everything is relatively subject to opinion, especially when it comes to the LMGs, so I suppose we'll start there with the L110 LMG. I do not like LMGs at all. I'm sure it's been given away with the way that I talked about the other LMG earlier. And the L110 is really no different. Granted, it's a significantly better LMG than the previous one. It's got an albeit decent fire rate at 719 RPM, and the real killer is of course the fact that it has the 100 round magazine, which means you can just shoot, and shoot some more, which oftentimes is just the right answer to the problem. The damage model is extremely similar to that of the M433 in that it can 4-shot up close and falls off to a 5-shot at most other ranges. The big problem I end up having with the L110 is that once again, it's an LMG, so you move slower with it ADS is really slow, and you just have to play super slow in order to make this gun work. With how fast-paced a lot of the matches in the beta are playing, especially with how much smaller a lot of the maps are compared to previous Battlefield games, I just feel like LMGs are on a bit of a struggle bus right now. I think when the game comes out and we have bigger maps, the LMGs might fit a better role, but as it stands right now, the L110, I just couldn't get into it, but it's not horrible, and I can see why people would want to use it. If you're gonna pick an LMG, make sure it's this one. Moving forward on the mediocre category, and we've got the AK-205. This gun is a super strange gimmick gun that I really didn't expect, but I actually enjoyed a fair bit when it came to using it. The AK-205 is a carbine that is effectively just a complete laser beam on purpose. The gun right out the box has basically no spread and basically no recoil. And with a fairly decent 720 RPM and the ability to get 40 round mags for it, this can be a pretty good gun for long to medium range engagements. The only real problem is, of course, the trade-off that you have for having such a beamy gun is that it's really a pea shooter. At minimum, it's going to take you 5 shots to kill without headshots, and that drops off to 6 to 7 the further out you get. Now granted, landing 6 to 7 shots is really easy at those ranges, but when it comes to close range, you're gonna lose pretty much everything with how many guns can 4-shot kill or 3-shot kill you, something I'll be getting to later. And so if you really like playing that longer range play style and you want a full auto gun that can still sort of compete up close, I think that this is definitely an option you could consider, but overall, it feels like such a pea shooter sometimes and is so just unsatisfying to play with that I can see a lot of people passing it up. It's not horrible, but it's definitely just a mediocre gun. And the last gun that falls into the mediocre category is gonna be the M39 EMR. I feel like the DMRs as a whole have gotten a really bad rap this time around, and it's not even really their fault because I don't think either of the DMRs are bad. far from it. The EMR would probably place higher on this list if the SVK didn't exist, which we'll be getting to later. I saw a lot of complaining about the EMR before I even picked it up, and then when I actually went to use it, I was extremely pleasantly surprised to report that this gun really is not terrible. We're looking at a 3-shot kill at practically all ranges. And because the rifle has a pretty fast bullet velocity, you can generally pick people off from range pretty well, and if push comes to shove and you need to push onto the point, you're not just automatically going to lose to everything you run up against like you would with a sniper rifle. It's gonna be a struggle for sure because you're fighting outside of the intended ranges, but it's not impossible. Overall, if you pick up a relatively ranger-like playstyle, skirt the edges of the points, and only push onto them when you have teammate support, you can consistently pin down and pick off enemies from a distance, and then continue to support the team when it gets to up-close combat. The real only problem with the EMR and the rest of the DMRs is that we only have one map in the game right now that really caters to DMR gameplay. The closer-knit games of King's Battery and the Siege on Cairo just don't lend themselves super great to the EMR, but it can be made to work, and I think it gets more hate than it deserves. Now we get to move up in the world, and we get the very first gun in the good category, and that weapon is going to be the B36A4. The B36 is a gun that is extremely similar to the L110 LMG, except for it's in the assault rifle format, which means that your handling is a lot better. And that, in my opinion, is what really pushes it above that gun by a significant margin. This weapon's niche is absolutely long-range combat. It's got a pretty good damage range for its initial 4-shot kill, and its 5-shot kill at further ranges can be easily obtained considering that the gun has little recoil and little spread. Generally, this gun is going to crush the AK-205 at most ranges, which is the reason that the AK-205 is much lower than it. The only reason that this gun doesn't fall into the great category is the fact that its general time to kill in terms of closer range engagements is lower, and this tier list is being based off of the beta. As I've already mentioned, smaller maps, less of a chance for the range to really come through. That said, I think this gun is absolutely worth using, and it's also incredibly good for Liberation Peak, as the longer ranged engagements are a lot more catered towards this weapon compared to some of the other ones we'll be talking about. Not that you can't make those other guns work, and not that they aren't still extremely effective, but this one just kind of reigns supreme on that one map specifically. But that's only one out of the 3 maps available, so I can't in good faith put it higher. Overall, this gun's quite good, and if you like playing at further ranges and like having an assault rifle that's still incredibly competitive close up, I'd recommend this weapon. The next weapon that falls into the good category is going to be the PW7A2. This submachine gun is admittedly probably supposed to be falling into a lower category because it doesn't really start to feel good to use until, in my opinion, you pretty much get it to max level. Once you've unlocked the suppressor and, most importantly, the extended mag, this gun feels really good to use. But before that, a lot of the time it feels like you run out of bullets before you're able to get a couple kills, so I can see why people wouldn't rate this as high as I did. That said, the gun does fall into a weird niche because it shoots really quick and has no recoil and basically no spread, which means that you can beam people from pretty far away despite it being an SMG. The odd part is that when you get up close, you're gonna start losing the vast majority of your fights. And that's because this gun, for whatever reason, takes 7 shots to kill at minimum if you're up close. Well, that is assuming you don't hit any headshots, that is. And when you take into consideration the overall fast 947 RPM, the end-all be-all is that if you have to hit somebody that many times, the margin for error is of course getting a lot higher, and there are guns in the game that can kill you in 3 shots up close, which means that you're just gonna get vaporized before you even get the chance. It just seems like a really weird gun. As a submachine gun, you lose a lot of close quarters fights, but you win most of your mid-range to long-range fights. It's strange. But the thing is that despite it being strange, it's still, in my opinion, a ton of fun to use. This is probably one of the things that genuinely should definitely be lower on the tier list, but the subjectivity of how enjoyable and fun it is to use this weapon in-game ends up pushing it a little bit higher. I would say if your time is limited and you had to pick a gun to use, I would not pick this one, seeing as you really need to level it up to make it good. But if you do have some extra time and for some reason you haven't picked it up yet, I can recommend it because I can say that once you get towards the end of those attachments, it really comes into its own and becomes a ton of fun. And the final weapon that falls into the good category is the M417A2. This gun unfortunately has the same fate as the SGX. That said, I don't think the problems are completely identical. What I'm getting at is that the M417 in a lot of ways is a clone of the SVO assault rifle. Except for, once again, the SVO assault rifle generally has better damage ranges. But more importantly, the SVO assault rifle can get a 40-round magazine, whereas the max you're going to end up getting with the M417 is a 26-round mag, which in a game with this many engagements involving so many extra people, 26 rounds often just doesn't cut it. That said, I found a lot of success when it came to the M417 in the factor of it having less random bullet spread and easier burst fire than the SVO. So in that capacity, you can definitely make it work. And because it's basically a clone of the SVO, it has a lot of the same traits as that gun, including a 3-shot kill up close. This is one of 2 guns that's capable of doing that, and just having a 3-shot kill in of itself is extremely powerful, and makes it so that way if you hit your shots, you will beat out every single gun at close quarters except for a shotgun. So it's capable of being a pretty solid medium range monster, and once you get up close, it can vaporize people, with the only reason that it doesn't end up higher being the existence of the SVO. And with that, we can move over to the top tier weapons in the game, the Great Tier. And we've been talking about it a fair bit, so why don't we start with the SVO 228E. This gun is a monster, and like I said earlier, the most important part about it is the fact that it can 3-hit kill up close. I'll be totally honest, I don't know why this is in the game. I don't think it should be in the game. And I also think that it's probably a rounding error, seeing as the gun says it does 33 damage, but that would leave someone with 1 health after 3 shots, but that doesn't happen. They just die. I assume it's supposed to do 34 damage, maybe they messed up. I have no idea. That said, having that 3-shot kill capability makes this gun up close a disaster to deal with if you're using anything else other than a shotgun. Now, it admittedly does start to struggle at range, especially when it comes to the random bullet deviation. This gun has a ton of built-in spread, and that can make it a struggle if you're not properly using burst fire. That said, if you are, it can continue to hold its own against some of the other better long-range weapons in the game. Granted, you're probably going to lose to a fair few of them, and one of them, most importantly, is on this list. So I suppose we'll get there with the M433. The M433 is a gun I'm really biased about because it's my favorite gun in the game to use hands down. And I think a lot of that probably stems from the fact that I think statistically, it's just one of the best, if not the best, guns in the game. While definitely lacking the 3-shot kill of the NVO, which is a bit rough, the M433 just beats out pretty much every single other gun at pretty much every single range in my experience. It's got the same 830 RPM as the SGX, which means that it's going to compete with the submachine guns and beat most other guns up close if you're hitting all of your shots. And because it has such a high rate of fire with those guns like the NVO or the M417, if those people are missing even just a single or 2 extra shots, you can miss a whole lot of shots and still beat them out if they only land 2 hits on you because you have to land 4 but have a much higher RPM. When we get out to the medium range, M433 just crushes everything. There's no real way around it. The 4-shot kill range extends more than far enough to just vaporize anyone at medium range with a high rate of fire and relatively minimal spread. Now, the only real thing that the gun struggles with is when you start to get to much further ranges where the spread is way more apparent, especially when you're moving or strafing. In those kinds of scenarios, it's generally speaking either better to directly stop in place in order to mitigate the spread, or more importantly, burst fire this gun, because the burst fire and the M433 is hyper accurate. Even just waiting a couple milliseconds in between pressing the trigger and holding it for about a second and then letting off and holding it for a second again means that you can kill people from ridiculous ranges with what probably looks like a laser beam on their screen, but in reality you're just burst firing the gun and controlling it properly. Overall, it's got the power of an SMG up close and can kick people's ass at basically every range, so this gun is my favorite and the one that I'd recommend the most. Moving forward on a relatively similar scale, we can talk about the M4A1, another one of my favorites. The M4 has a lot of similar traits to the M44, with the caveat of the fact that it has a 900 RPM, making it a lot of the time feel like an SMG with extra range, which is why it's so much fun to use. When you start getting up close and personal with the M4, it feels really snappy and very satisfying. A quick rate of fire means that you're going to beat out all of the other SMGs in the game, doing the exact same 25 damage, but with a higher rate of fire. And when you start to get to longer ranges, you're still going to be beating those SMGs with a superior damage range and a superior rate of fire. Now, of course, you might start struggling in the mid-range versus some of the assault rifles, the M433 and the B36 specifically, but if you play to your strengths and continue to keep the engagement distances short, then you can beat out those guns. The only real drawback to this gun is that, once again, it has a pretty good amount of random bullet spread at ranges, and naturally, if any of those 3-shot kill guns have a perfect hit on you at close range, you're gonna get erased. But most of the time, if the people aren't perfect, it's gonna go the other way around. And considering how hectic and chaotic things can get, a lot of the time, this over-glorified SMG with extra range can evaporate your opponents and is really, really good. Highly recommend it. And then the final gun that gets put into the great tier is the SVK 8.6. The SVK goes into the great tier not necessarily because I think that it's a really, really good gun, but mostly because it basically invalidates the sniper rifle on all of the available maps. The SVK is a semi-auto DMR with a 10-round magazine that 2-shot kills. It does 60 damage up close and 50 damage at range, meaning that you're always going to 2-shot kill someone unless they're really far away. This means that the only real thing that the sniper rifle has over the SVK is, of course, the 1-shot kill potential if you hit a headshot or you get a shot in the sweet spot range. But of course, this lacks the gimmick of the bolt-action rifle in that you can actually push onto points, and because it's a 2-shot kill, if you're hitting your shots, you can do well at medium range. So the SVK ends up being an extremely capable anti-sniper tool while still remaining an extremely capable medium-range threat that can be used to push and take objectives. It ended up being one of my favorite guns to use on Liberation Peak, as you can constantly deal with pesky snipers and continue to keep it competitive as long as you play your ranges effectively. The King's Battery map, it also generally works pretty well as long as you hug the outskirts of the map. The only real struggle with this gun can be on Siege of Cairo because some of those points are so close quarters that the SVK is going to struggle. But overall, just being an anti-sniper tool that can still capture points makes this gun great in my opinion. And of course, the final gun of the day, which gets its own tier, is this damn shotgun. Oh my god. At this point, everyone knows about the shotgun. It's obnoxious as all hell, it's pretty ridiculously overtuned, and the developers already know that it's a problem. Now granted, I think the controversial thing that I'll say about the shotgun is I actually don't think that as a Battlefield shotgun, it's that overtuned. If you go back to play Battlefield 4, Battlefield 2042, or even games like Battlefield 1, a lot of the shotguns in those games have some pretty crazy range on them, and there's a reason for that. When you go into a Battlefield game, you expect longer engagement distances, and if you're equipping a shotgun, it means you're not equipping an assault rifle, carbine, SMG, you get the idea. And that means that your effective range is extremely limited. So, in order to make the shotguns feel like they're actually potentially worth picking, the developers of those games made it so that way they have a decent range on them. So if you're hitting your shots at, I don't know, 50 meters, you can hit them 5 or 6 times and you're gonna get a kill. Now, of course, we've got the problem of the fact that the shotgun currently in the BF6 beta at 50 to 60 meters can 2-shot kill you, which is absurd. But generally speaking, if that was dialed back a little bit, I think that the shotgun would probably be in a halfway decent place, if the weapon sling for the assault class didn't exist. Time for me to go into a mini rant about the shotgun and the weapon sling, which doesn't really have a whole lot to do with this video, but the weapon sling in of itself is horribly designed and just does not have a place in the game, plain and simple, and shotguns are a great example as to why that is. I just mentioned the fact that shotguns in Battlefield need to be balanced around being a destructive instant kill up close, but still be halfway decent at range, because you need to make it so that way people might actually want to pick the shotgun. But with the weapon sling, you just can't have shotguns performing like that, because if the shotgun anywhere from 1 meter to 20 meters is going to one-tap you, it means that any of those ranges, the shotgun just auto-wins, and it invalidates submachine guns completely along with a lot of the carbines. So then you'd say, all right, well, we need to balance the shotgun to make sure that those guns are still viable. But it's not actually balancing the shotgun you're doing, because if you nerf the shotgun in those ranges and make it only usable extremely close up, then the shotgun only becomes a viable option on the weapon sling for the assault class. If the assault class's weapon sling didn't exist at all, then picking the shotgun could be extremely debilitating in a lot of these engagement ranges, and you wouldn't just be able to switch over to an AR. But as it stands, the devs' hands are tied in terms of balancing the shotgun. There's no right answer here. Well, there is one. It's removing the weapon sling, something that they seem to not want to do. Initially, I thought the weapon sling wouldn't be that big of a deal. People complained about the snipers being able to run SMGs, and I was like, if someone's sitting in the back with a sniper anyway, they're probably not going to be pushing with an SMG. Who gives a shit? But the shotgun really opened my eyes to how horrible this mechanic is, and it really needs to be taken out. Anyways, generally wrapping up the tier list, I guess I can touch on the fact that the weapon balance sort of worries me in the game as it is right now. I'm now allowed to talk about the fact that I was a Battlefield Labs tester, so I can say that the overall weapon balance has been pretty much identical to the very first test I participated in several months ago, all the way up until the Labs beta now. And there were some guns in those Labs tests that were just so hysterically overpowered that, well, it scares me. There was an MTAR available in the Labs tests that did 33 damage, which meant it was a 3-shot kill, but it didn't have the range limiting factors that the SVO and the M417 have in the beta. So you could 3-shot kill people out to like 20 meters, which made the gun just better than everything else. And the reason that this stuff scares me so much is because it's just gonna give more and more ammo to a lot of these class-locked idiots who don't understand that the problems here on display are not problems with the systems of class locking themselves, but more so with the developers being almost sort of incompetent with their balancing of the weapons themselves. 2042, for all of its hate and all of its problems, has an extremely well-balanced weapon roster, and if those footsteps were being followed in Battlefield 6, I'd be less worried, but as it stands, it doesn't really look to be that way. And that does worry me. Not to say that there are any unusable weapons really in the game right now, just some really questionable balance decisions, especially when it comes to weapons like the SGX, which, as I mentioned in the video, are just worse than the M433 in every capacity, which makes me wonder why it's even there to begin with. Anyways, I'll stop my yap sesh. The tier list is on screen right now. If you're curious of what to use, I would highly recommend the M433 and the M4A1. Those are my two favorites. Everything else is usable in the niches that I explained. With that though, we are wrapping up, so if you enjoyed the video, you could leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.